A note to listeners, the following podcast contains content that may not be suitable for all audiences.
That's a person's life in a box, in a mess, with no organization. The same with Christina White. There was no organization. When you're opening up a case file, it should read like a story. It should be all put together. So the next person that steps in after you have investigated the case, they can step in and go, okay, the ducks are in a row. Why would you go across country, sell your house, just boom, and leave? Something spooked him. I haven't figured out what it is yet, but law enforcement was on him pretty hot and heavy. Mm-hmm. And he was questioned right around that time for the Spokane River murders.
If he is listening right now, what would you say to him?
Give your DNA, take a polygraph test, talk to me. I want to hear your side of the story. And I have always said that. I want to hear what you have to say. That's, explain yourself, why you won't do some things to clear your name.
You are listening to Partners in True Crime. We are your hosts, Rob and Cindy Dorfman. Hi, everyone. If you're enjoying the podcast, please leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts, even if it's one word.
And please subscribe to our website, www.partnersintruecrime. Follow us on TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram to check out our weekly promos. We're also now on YouTube at Partners in True Crime. If you subscribe to our website, you'll be getting weekly emails from us and all kinds of promotions and things that we don't advertise on the podcast.
We appreciate all the great reviews, so please keep them coming as well. Just go on to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, drop us a review, subscribe, and tell your friends about what we're doing. Also, feel free to take pieces of the podcast, share with others. Our goal is to get the word out to as many people as possible, so thank you. Also, we are currently looking into the case of another young victim in Oklahoma, which seems very suspicious. 8 months ago, on September 4th, Noah Presgrove was 19 years old when he was found dead on a highway near Terrell, Oklahoma.
His family is still looking for answers to find out what happened in Noah's horrible death, and we are talking to them. In the coming weeks, we will be launching the What Happened to Noah Presgrove podcast, where we will go through the facts of the case with the family and try to help them find some answers. Check out announcements on Partners in True Crime for further information.
On today's podcast, we continue our conversation with an amazing woman and crusader for justice, GLORIA BOBERTZ. At least 5 victims went missing or were found killed near the Washington-Idaho border between 1979 and 1982.
GLORIA, who is the cousin of one of the victims, Christina Nelson, has been investigating this case for 5 decades. She's also investigating the murders of Brandy Miller, Stephen Pearsall, Christina White, and Kristen David.
GLORIA believes all the murders were committed by one man who lived in the area who fits the profile, and she is hot on his trail.
GLORIA reached out to Laura to confirm her suspicions regarding this person's psychological profile. And today we'll dig in further on this person who law enforcement hasn't ruled out as a suspect yet.
Now it's time for part 2 of our interview with GLORIA BOBERTZ.
As far as getting used to hearing, because there were rumors going around the Lewiston Valley, what had happened. And people are mean that way, or they don't know that they're being mean and calloused. I heard that Christina was decapitated. I heard she was impaled. All these different stories. And pretty soon if you want answers and you want justice, you get a tough skin and you just let that bounce off of you because I'm focused. I want answers. And if some tidbit of information comes to me, if it makes any sense, I'm going to look at it and I'm going to go down the rabbit hole. And I have. But when Kristen David, and during the filming of Cold Valley, that case went over to Detective Jackie Nichols, and it came over in boxes with no rhyme or reason. I saw the boxes and the files, the papers were just thrown in there. And that's a person's life in a box, in a mess, with no organization. You know, the same with Christina White. You know, there was no organization. When you're opening up a case file, it should read like a story. It should be all put together. So the next person that steps in after you have investigated the case, they can step in and go, okay, the ducks are in a row here.
Well, that makes sense. But, you know, to be perfectly honest, with that long of a case that's been around, you're lucky you got anything.
You're lucky
a lot of times
you got the files.
You got the files. A lot of times they mysteriously disappear. There's a flood. There's a fire. There's all these things. We have so many cases that we've helped people with where there are no files. There's no bodies.
I've talked to like looking at cases in California, because he's also a suspect in the Santa Rosa hitchhiker murders. That
really
you're missing.
Whoa,
yes,
whoa,
he
whoa!
is.
Hold on one second.
Hold on one second.
Because we've been talking to someone else who is a potential suspect. Why do they think he's a suspect in Santa Rosa?
The MO fits. The girls were found off the side of the road. They were hogtied, strangled. Just their little earmarks that they're looking at.
Hey, Laura, you may want to talk to your guys over at SFPD about that.
Yeah.
Also, he was doing rally car races, poker runs with cars. So he was very familiar with the roads there in the Bay Area. And that is something that's been taken into consideration. And that he had women riding with him that, you know, they would want to go with him. And back in the day, women, you know, they hitchhiked. There was no fear. But yeah, he's been looked at for those cases and a few others down in the Bay Area. And they've added to the Santa Rosa hitchhiker murders. Some of the victims that they added made almost a complete circle around an address that Boss's cousin lived at in San Francisco. I use that as like a point area. This is, you know, and these victims were found around almost in a horseshoe around that address.
Yeah.
One of them was found at a school, and he worked for the Lake Berryessa School District as a library aide. And his cousin was, she was employed at the San Francisco School District, and she was a speech therapist.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
They also, I just did a search on his name. They also have him as a possible Zodiac as well.
Can't rule it out. Cannot rule it out.
Yeah, we were just...
Well, and there's a lot of layers to him. One of the things that he puts ads in newspapers. He writes letters to the editor. I haven't traced it back into the Bay Area yet, using old numbers to see if any trace back to him. His picture was in the Chicago newspaper when Diane Taylor was found. Now, that's, what a thrill for him. Did he want to continue that?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think you have to worry about his name. His name's all over the internet.
Yeah.
And
I know law enforcement can't say his name. I can. I can say it as many times as I want to. Absolutely. I can throw him under the bus. I can challenge him. I think part of the fear, too, in the Lewiston Valley was he's married to Patricia Brennan, who is the granddaughter of the actor Walter Brennan.
So what does that mean? Who cares?
Well, some people go, oh, he's going to have money and he'll sue me. And,
that was 100 years ago. That's 100 years ago, Walter Brennan.
I know, but the people think, the way they think, and they're afraid. He's eccentric. He's odd. He's a suspected serial killer. When I started looking at him, I was told by one of the detectives to be careful. He's a sociopath. Okay, I'll do that.
Well,
I am.
Do you remember when, Gloria, you and I did that live podcast?
Yes.
and what happened, that was the first time I couldn't believe it, because it was 100% him. And he was watching Gloria, and he started calling in to try to mess with her.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I have tried to talk to him. I've spoke to his wife. I can say that I'm probably not on her Christmas card list, but I want answers. And I don't care where I have to go or who I have to talk to get those answers.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that he'll listen to this podcast. He wants to know what's going on. And you're right, Laura. I'm pretty sure that was him. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he's got a huge ego.
Mm-hmm. Well, he was sending him, what was it, sexual tapes?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
Like what?
Like playing pornographic tapes, like calling in, like he wanted to talk to Gloria to ask about the case, like a supporter or viewer or whatever, and was playing porn tapes.
What?
That's like juvenile.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
It's very juvenile.
Mm-hmm.
And he has a way of, taunting, and I considered that taunting. And it is juvenile, and he is weak, because an honest man, okay, a man that had nothing to hide, would say, I'm going to sue you for slander. I'm going to do something to you. And that has never come up.
No.
So,
because that would put him, that would expose him a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And part of me too is, and like I said, this snowballed, and I didn't realize it was going to get as big as it is, because the case is fairly well known. But I had no idea that it would get that way. And I also worried about, and I have worried about, have I pushed him to do something else? Just,
I usually, Laura, what do you think about that? If you got someone who's on your tail, do you really think that they would go out and do something again and expose themselves?
No, I think it would actually keep them more in line.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's good, because I did, I have thought about that. I don't want any other family to go through this. I can't even describe to you what it did to the 5 families, and I'm in touch with all the family members, and I give them updates, as to what's going on. There is he had an affair with a woman named Claudette Valiva, and she committed suicide, and he found her body.
Of course.
And there was a lot of things about her suicide that didn't fit. It seemed kind of staged, but I mean, what an absolute, that had to be, for him, thrilling to find her.
Let's talk about just general population. How many people do you know that have discovered someone from a suicide and also has been a potential serial killer suspect in a quadruple homicide? How many people you know? I think you could probably do the percentages there. Very low percentage of people who've been in, had that happen to them in their lives.
Correct. I can think of, and I worked in the mental health field for 19 years, and people find, if you find somebody that has committed suicide, that's the odds of that are, you're going to find it, but not over and over and over again.
Yeah. And did that woman have any history of mental health problems?
She had depression.
Okay.
But according to the people that were around her right before her suicide, she was doing well. She was happy. The total opposite of somebody that is thinking about suicide. Mm-hmm. She was making plans for the future. And yes, it does happen. But it was just, odd. Was this an affair, obviously, that was kept under wraps and that his wife didn't know about? She apparently was over at their house and would have dinner and such. I don't know, and you would think she would know. Patricia, his wife would know that he's having an affair, but I think he played it off as she was just a friend, and it went far deeper than that. I talked to Claudette's aunt, and she said that she was in love with Lance.
There you go.
And he went, Claudette had talked to her and confessed all this, and her aunt was very angry about the whole affair, and she didn't think it was right.
Was there a suicide note?
Yes, there was a suicide note. There were several. She left several, and some of them looked like they were written under stress. The writing changes, and the way she was found, it just didn't. It seemed kind of staged.
Yeah.
The window was open. The fan was blowing on her body. She was on her back. Just things that don't seem right.
Yeah.
If you're going to commit suicide, you're not going to open the window up. You're not going to turn the fan on yourself to make to make sure that you're cool. It just was odd.
Wow. And what town was that done in? The
Lewiston.
Same town?
Lewiston, yeah.
Does he still live in that area?
Mm-mm. No, he lives in Matthews, North Carolina.
Got it. So he went all the way across the country.
Yeah, I spoke with his father-in-law before he passed away, and I wanted to know what he thought about him. And he said that he was lazy. And I said, well, what took him over to North Carolina? And he said he looked for a job online and took a job as a used car salesman. So I believe something spooked him right around 97, 98, because he's registered to vote in the Charlotte, Mecklenburg area as of 1999. But I mean, he's uprooting, he's leaving his dome house that he was so proud of. I talked to the realtor that he used to put the house on the market, and she said he couldn't wait to get rid of it. So there's a real rushed, he had to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And
what did he do for a living while he was in Lewiston?
House husband.
Oh, so he didn't work.
He worked at Omar Bullet Company for a while. He was working at the Lewiston Civic Theater until he got fired because there was just too much,
people going missing.
Yeah, exactly. He did have a job as a music tutor for the Clarkston School District, and he lost that job because, of course, when you have people disappearing when you're around, you really don't want your children around them.
Exactly.
So he didn't really he started a business. The business failed. He didn't really have consistent employment. And he talks about that. He placed a lot of Google groups. He made like 365 different posts. And in one of those posts, he said that he, stayed at home and took care of stuff like that. And that seems to be a pattern with him also. His first and second wife, they said he was lazy, couldn't hold a job. He had a job over in the Melba, Idaho area, just removing rocks out of a field, and he got fired from that job. I mean, how hard is that?
Mm-hmm.
So his employment history, not so good. So he took this job over in Charlotte, North Carolina as a used car salesman. And why would you go across country, sell your house, just boom, and leave? Something spooked him. I haven't figured out what it is yet, but law enforcement was on him pretty hot and heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And he was questioned right around that time for the Spokane River murders. That was, I think he was questioned in 95 or 96 or somewhere in there. But he's lived in the valley for over 10 years after the murders. What came up that suddenly he's got to uproot and move?
Yeah.
What was his IQ, Gloria?
He's Mensa. He
Uh-huh.
belongs to Mensa. He has a high IQ, but I think he only uses that intelligence when he has to, or it's going to benefit him.
Yeah. Well, he just has maybe a high IQ and a very low EQ, emotional intelligence. That's what it sounds like.
Yes.
So, which is
Yeah,
Laura, I would imagine that's pretty common among these guys.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, if you look at my study, you can tell they'll have high IQs, but the EQ will be much, much lower.
Yeah.
Yeah, he would have to probably mock people in order to fit in.
Yeah.
And that's probably where that word eccentric has come up. I couldn't tell you how many times.
I know. Eccentric, but the other one that comes up is creepy.
Creepy.
Yes, creepy.
Eccentric is a polite way of saying creepy.
Yeah, it really is. They've wanted to get away from him. Just a general overall how you have that instinct of, I need to get out of here. I'm going to listen to that. I need to leave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Gloria, let me just talk to you a little bit about what do you need help with? Because you are amazing.
Oh my God.
Anybody that does this, because we have another woman that we work with too on another case that's unsolved, and she reminds me a lot of you. A lot of just taking matters in her own, and it was her cousin too. And so it was very similar. And
good for her.
Yes, and she took it upon herself because So what can we do to help you? Because you're hot on his trail, it sounds like, and you're not giving up.
No, I'm not. I would like to know more about the cases in the Bay Area, cases that have his MO, such as the Santa Rosa hitchhiker murders.
Mm-hmm.
There was also, if I had a way of talking to El Dorado County, they shut me down hard because I called about Donna Lass, and he drove over to Nevada when he was doing his poker runs, his rally races. Mm-hmm. And her case really stood out, not because it's a Zodiac case, just her disappearing and a phone call being made to her place of employment, and if I'm not mistaken, to her family. And that's something he's been known to do too, is make phone calls. So,
and that's an MO right there, Laura.
Yes, it is.
It is. It's actually a paraphilia. It could be a signature as well.
The case of Deborah Shelton out of Aptos, California. She went missing in January of 1979, and she was found, I believe, in March or April of the same year. She was found by railroad tracks. Somebody had called their house and, prank call, want money, that kind of stuff. So her case is on my radar too. But Donna Lass, there was a postcard that was sent to, I believe it was the San Francisco Chronicle or the PD. And it's a lot like what you would use for rally car racing, a key. So you put it over a map and it gives you directions. And I can't remember exactly what was on the postcard, but some of it goes back to rally car racing. And if that's
you gotta have money for that though. That's not something you can do on your, without a job. So he either was bilking someone for money. He must be a master manipulator of getting women to give him money.
Well, his first wife, she supported him. And she finally got tired of that. He was allowed to use the car, and she would have to take public transportation to work.
And he didn't even go to work.
No. When he got out of the Navy, July of 1968, he was in a bad motorcycle accident, and he had a compound fracture of, I want to say, his tibia. It messed him up pretty bad. So I think he milked that. He had the car adjusted so he could shift the clutch with his cane. And at the time, he was driving a 1968 blue Saab. He also had a white Alfa Romeo that, according to her, kept breaking down. But he was lazy. For example, she told me that he would take dishes out that he didn't want to wash, and he would take them up in the hills and shoot them. Who does that?
Yeah.
And then his second wife, she got him a job at Der Wiener Schnitzel in San Jose. And then they went from there up to Canyon County, Melba, Idaho. And she had, he has a daughter, he has a biological daughter, and she left him. So she went back down to the Bay Area, took her daughter and went back down to the Bay Area.
Well, he definitely sounds like a charming guy, and I'm glad you're hot on his trail. And
Well, Gloria,
yes,
wasn't there an incident with people camping with Foss?
yes. There was a woman that she was young. She worked across the street at, Wascom Pharmacy, and he worked across from that at what was then Sterling Bank. He somehow found out she was camping. He might have overheard that, her talking in the pharmacy or whatever, but he followed her and her family up to a campground, and her aunt they were down by like a creek swimming, whatever, and this woman had come up, and her name's Crystal, and he was sitting there in a truck, and he was asking directions, and he wanted her to get in the truck, and something told her no. And just about this time, her aunt came back up the hill. So I did ask her, I said, what was the first thing you noticed that was odd? Did you notice something about him that just, it stuck with you? She said his pants were pressed. He was wearing jeans and he had a line down the middle. His jeans were pressed. And what this says to me is this is an event for him. This is something special for him. He wasn't dressed for camping. He was dressed very nice. So anyway, she left, and her aunt and uncle stayed there camping, and he basically was peeking out of trees at them. They got so uptight because they could keep seeing him that they pulled up camp and left, because he was like just in and out of the bushes and the trees, and he was watching them, and they just didn't feel comfortable.
So creepy.
Yeah. Is he married now?
Yes.
So
he married Patricia Brennan. He's been married since 1970. Wait a minute. 1981.
1981.
Mm-hmm.
And she's there in North Carolina with him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, listen,
and they do come out to Idaho. They go up into the Sandpoint area where her daughter lives.
Mm-hmm.
Her son lives in I think it's the Shelbyville area of Tennessee.
Well, we'd love to, like I said, anything you need, just let us know to support what you're doing. We totally support what you're doing. You're doing God's work for your cousin. This is not for our listeners. I mean, I know everyone who's interested in this type of stuff. This is hard work, hard emotional work to be doing it this long.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that you're still doing it and you're chugging along and you're hot on his trail, because it sounds like, and like you said, well, I think Laura, I think we can kind of see if your colleagues over at SFPD might want to hear about this as well. What do you think?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
That would be great. If they didn't talk to me, Detective Jackie Nichols, but I would love to talk to him because I have so much information squirreled away in my head that something could trigger.
Yeah. Yeah, because they have quite a bit of, cold cases that, Laura has been kind of looking in with them as well. And so I think if there's any kind of connection there. It's he fits the timeline. And it's interesting, Laura, what's really interesting is that it's always the Navy. It's like, David Carpenter, he was in the Navy. They say the Zodiac Killer was in the Navy. There's a lot of, the other gentleman Golden State was the Navy. The guy that was Roy Norris in the Navy. The guy that I was telling you about who thinks his dad might be the Santa Rosa Killer. His dad was in the Navy. And they all kind of fit that same prototype.
Yeah. And he was in the Bay Area from 1968 until 1974. And that is when the Santa Rosa hitchhiker murders, boom, they stopped. That is when anything more is heard from the Zodiac. And, I am not trying to glorify a serial killer. To me, you take away that moniker and he is nothing more than murderer. He is a cold-blooded killer. And so people get stuck in that going, oh no, it couldn't be. Well, if you throw away all that crap and just look at the victimology of it and, the timeline and all that, you're looking at it in different eyes, and that's the way it should be. So
yeah. Well, I'm glad you connected with Laura.
Yeah, I'm glad you were able to connect with us.
Laura's great.
She's great. She's
Laura's
awesome.
He didn't kill everybody in the world, so some of it you have to look at with different eyes and go, okay, this fits. So I consulted with Laura, who's, she's one of the few people I could call up and say some of the things I said to her. It's like, okay, I don't.
Like it or not, Laura, you are like the serial killer encyclopedia now.
I know. I know.
Well, and some people get taken back by some of the questions, and talking to Laura about this is like just sitting down with your girlfriend and, having a soda or something and just chitty-chatting about why would they do this, and this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and you like I said, you kind of condition yourself to just dealing with it. It's also an education too, because if it won't help your case, it might help somebody else's case.
Exactly.
Right.
And I think everybody learns, and I think victims' families learn from people like you and our friend Paula, who's working that Oklahoma case for her cousin. They learn that you don't have to be a victim as well. And you can take action.
No.
You can take action, because a lot of these police departments, they don't have the bandwidth to handle these cases.
Yeah.
And so and people forget that this is just a job to them. This is not for a lot of cops and a lot of homicide detectives, they put their heart and soul into this, and they want to solve these cases. But for, a lot of them, it's like they can only do so much. And they're kind of hamstring a lot of times by the bureaucracy that they have to deal with. A lot of the things that they would love to do, kick in a door, call, get him somewhere, question him, and do what you would need to do in order to get some, it's illegal to do. And so they're constrained from the law to find it. Even if they see the guy, they know for a fact that he did it. In a lot of these cases, they know for a fact that this person did it, but they can't prove it in a court of law, and they only get one shot in a court of law. You've got one shot. Sometimes you've got to take it. But if you're a family member and you have, one of your family members that's a victim of a violent crime, and you want to do something, the one thing I can say is, when you're dealing with law enforcement, do not cry, okay? Just meat and potatoes of the matter, because they don't have time for the fluff, there's a time and a place for your grieving and your crying, and then there's a time when you have to be very direct. And with law enforcement, they just want the facts. It's not that they don't care, but they, that's just what it is. All the other stuff is not going to matter in the case. Does that make sense? Yes. Well, you're one of many people that they're seeing on the worst days of their lives. They're always seeing people on the worst days of their lives. So not that they're unsympathetic to it, but in order for them to do their jobs, they have to be stoic, and they have to be able to stick to the facts, and they have to be able to unemotional about it, even though, they're very empathetic. A lot of them are very empathetic. And so, but
I have to say, for Chicago PD, when I came across the Diane Taylor case, I was researching, and my gut told me there was something up in Illinois, something up in Chicago. So when I came across her case, I called the Chicago PD. And let me tell you, they've got a lot of precincts. So I started with number 1, and I was directed to the correct precinct, and they answered their own phones, which amazed me. And they didn't have to listen to a woman that was calling about a 56-year-old cold case, but they did. And he said he would call me back, the detective, and he did. And I gave him Jackie Nichols' information. So I have to say thank you to them, because they didn't have to listen.
No, well, that's
and
great.
The one thing I have to, I emphasized to him was I would not waste your time. I would not. And they did their due diligence to follow through on her case, which that's not over yet either. So anyway, I just wanted to give a big shout out to the Chicago PD.
Well, that's great. That's
nice.
Great. And like I said, there's tons of great law enforcement out there, and I'm glad you had a good experience with them. We've had great experiences with law enforcement, but they're, like I said, in this particular case, I just don't think they probably had the right resources to really handle this case.
I don't think they had seen anything like that come into the valley.
No.
I mean, that's something that you see in other larger areas, but not hometown USA.
No, and they just don't. I have a friend of mine who's a retired homicide detective in New York City, and his caseload was 3 to 4 homicides a week, and he was there for 25 years. So you just do the numbers there.
Goodness.
So you get to a point where it's you know what to look for, and it's just it's repetition. The more you do these investigations, the more you interview people, the more you do all this stuff. It just it's a skill set that has to be honed and developed. It can't be like we're doing like maybe a couple car thefts that happen in that town, and car accidents and that kind of thing. They're not doing big investigative type stuff, so they just don't have the skill set to do that. And I'm really surprised for something like this that you said the FBI brought in, but I'm curious to see how much
I am,
because they have
I'm
to be
pretty sure,
number one, they have to be called in by the local department. They have to be requested. So and
Kristen David's case was so that just rocked the valley. I mean, you have a young lady that has been dismembered and thrown in black trash bags into the Snake River. They'd never seen anything like that. So, I'm pretty fair. I can say, yes, the FBI has been involved in Kristen David's case. I will send, there's a news, they did, I think it was 3 years ago. They had a news, a press release about her case, and they were separating it from the Lewiston Civic Theater cases. And I can send that press release. And Kristen David's sister was there and talked. So yes, I can say yes, the FBI was involved in her case.
Okay, great.
For sure.
Well, Gloria,
so
we got to get off here, but listen, I want to stay in touch with you. You stay in touch with us. We have your information. Keep us abreast of what you're doing. Let us know
absolutely
what you need help with. I know Laura's there. She's a huge resource for you. But I think there is definitely, other than just making sure this guy doesn't do it again. I don't know what else you can do at this point, but
no body prosecutions. That Jackie won one of those. Well, she had, she was involved in Rachel Anderson up there, and her disappearance, and her body's never been found. And also DNA laws. Where are those loopholes?
Yeah. Well, he's in a different state now. So.
I have one last question. Gloria, if he is listening right now, what would you say to him?
Give your DNA, take a polygraph test, talk to me. I want to hear your side of the story. And I have always said that. I want to hear what you have to say. That's, explain yourself, why you won't do some things to clear your name. Because I'm going to continue dragging it through the mud until I get the answers and the justice. So that's what I have to say to him. My phone number is out there. He can call me. I would talk to him. I just want answers. That's it.
Yep. Well, here's to answers. And like I said before, you keep on trucking, Gloria. You're an amazing woman. And like I said, we support everything you're doing. And
thank you.
And hopefully, answers are right around the corner. But you just called him out. So let's see if he comes out.
I hope he does.
Yep.
Please visit our website where you can subscribe to the podcast, find show notes, and check out extra content from all of our podcasts. All rights reserved. This has been a production of 722 Media Content.